What actually happens to your relationship after a baby? As entrepreneurs who have partners, they are often a huge part of our support system. But once a baby comes into the mix, things change. So today I am sitting down with Chelsea Skaggs, a relationship coach and co founder of Postpartum Together. We break down the 5 biggest shifts that couples experience postpartum and how to navigate them without losing your connection. Because everyone prepares you for pregnancy and newborn stuff, but very few people are talking about what happens between you and your partner after. So we get into everything today from emotional connection, the mental load that happens, intimacy changes, the most common communication breakdowns, nuanced dynamics, especially as women who are ambitious and high performing. How do we navigate this and bring our partner along the ride? So, whether you're pregnant, newly postpartum, thinking about starting a family one day, this episode will give you some really practical tools for how to move through this transition together, as well as a new perspective I encourage you to try on. Welcome to Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. I am your host, Samantha Fackler, business mentor and brand strategist. This show is about what it takes to build something in public. A business, a body of work, a brand, or a creative project so that you reach the right people. After 14 years in brand and marketing, I've seen so much confusing advice out there that tells you either need systems and rigid frameworks or intuition and manifestation vibes. And from my experience working with over 100 companies and even more clients, I find that growth is somewhere in the middle. So here we talk about the real choices of creating, showing up, and attracting the people that your work is meant for. Right now, I am very pregnant while running my company, so that journey will probably make its way into the show too. I'm glad you're here, and let's get into it. If you enjoy this podcast, you will probably enjoy my newsletter even more. Once a week, I send a letter straight from my desk to yours, and it's very behind the scenes. It's less polished, and it's really sharing, what I'm going through mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as an entrepreneur, as someone who's intuitive and is following things like astrology and human design as I navigate my path forward, as well as someone who is welcoming their first child into the world and moving through that identity shift. So I really break it all down. I also share tips on what is working and what is not working. So if you want to join that, you can subscribe in the link in the show notes. Welcome. We have Chelsea Skaggs, relationship educator and coach for parents. Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Samantha. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm so excited. So, as you know, we were talking about it earlier. I'm about 27 weeks pregnant right now. And I find that so many women listening to the show, a part of the community, they either have kids, are recent moms, or they're thinking about becoming pregnant. Maybe they're expecting. And there's this really big question of, how is my relationship going to change with this massive transition? And of course, most of our audience, we're busy, we have businesses, we're building something. So your relationship is a big support system part of that. And I think to dive in quickly with you, what are the most common changes that you see with relationships once kids enter the picture?
Yeah, this is actually what everything we do is built on. So, one is emotional disconnection, just like feeling like roommates. 2 is some struggles over the mental load and role responsibility. 3 is changes in intimacy and how this couple is used to sharing their love and desire for each other. 4 would be the communication breakdown. So things that you used to be able to agree to disagree or go your separate ways. You can't always do that in this season. So learning those patterns and how to get out of them. And then the last is just like the evolution of the personal identity and how much it takes to, one, understand that in yourself, and to two, be able to communicate that and understand that with your partner who you functioned in a certain way for a long time.
Yeah, and those are all huge changes.
Huge.
Let's start with the very first one. So, can you break down exactly what's happening there?
Yeah, so emotional disconnection is just when we start to feel more like roommates. That's what I find a lot of people Google. Why do I feel like roommates with my partner? And that's because there's like nothing super special you're having and sharing with that person that you wouldn't everyone else. There's not those real intentional, I see you, I know you, this is a me to you soul level connection for a lot of people, because there's just not like the time and the space and the capacity. And I think ways that we're used to feeling fulfilled or validated or just like loved and cherished in our relationship, when those things aren't happening consistently, it can just feel like a big roommate phase, like people say. And so that's why we build in this intentionality of having awareness of the tiny connections that really matter to you, that you can prioritize for your partner consistently, not because you always feel like it or not because the energy or the spark is always there, but because you're choosing to pour into that emotional connection bucket.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you don't even realize how often those little things are happening before babies and kids come. And then it's like, wait a second, your ship's in the night. Maybe you're breastfeeding or someone's taking care of the baby. I've seen so many reels and I've heard from so many people like it's almost like you're both operating in a newborn ward of sorts.
Yeah, and it's very logistical, which doesn't feel connected and sexy in ways that maybe we would need to get back to in our relationship.
Yeah, completely. And I'm trying to think back to number two that you shared. What was
Yeah.
number two?
Yeah, mental load.
Mental load. Oh
What
my
are you
gosh. Yeah.
seeing online about that? I became a mom 10 years ago and we didn't even have the words for mental load. And so I'm so happy to see what has evolved. But I'm curious, as a first time expecting mom, what are you seeing around that?
I see two main things. One is just the schedules and getting used to, okay, this is when baby sleeps and this is when baby eats and orienting their whole world around that. I think that's a completely new way of thinking and living that was not present before. So that takes up a lot of mental space. But then, two, what I see with a lot of women and what I hear is that they're also constantly thinking in the back of their head, and I'm already thinking about it too, what's work going to look like? How is this going to adjust to work? How is work going to blend with taking care of our baby? Questions come up, mentally around daycare, childcare, actively trying to figure things out as you go because before baby comes, you have no idea if it's your first. So mentally, there's so much information you're moving through, and you have the identity side too, which is deeper. So that's what I've been picking up from people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're getting like ideas and just the language to talk about these things with your partner, with your friends. What we see is that women, we don't have to go on the side trail of whether it's biologically or societally or how women become the main key holders of many things for a family. And they can grow resentful because you kind of feel like you never get to relax your nervous system if you're constantly on. You constantly have these tabs open. And I think that's where we have a real struggle with women even identifying what self care is for them, because they're not able to just get into a relaxed state. But we see a lot of discrepancy in what women traditionally, speaking very generically, take on and feel the pressure of, and what men are even aware of. And so I think the biggest leg up couples can have here is building some language where they're like, okay, we're kind of making this not so emotional, but like this is a thing. How are we together going to tackle this thing? And when that happens, it's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better. And when that doesn't happen, we see a lot of resentment. We see a lot of men that are like, I just can't do anything right. I'm always messing up. And that's that pattern that happens really frequently because the mental load is like such a heavy emotional, mental, societal piece that we're seeing right now.
And I've heard that from women too. It's like their husband can go off for the weekend and go to a bachelor party or hang out with their guys, but they actually physically have to stay, or they're physically the one up in the middle of the night because they're breastfeeding, or there's that link that they have to be there because their body is a part of the newborn survival. And then that, of course, sounds like a breeding ground for some resentment.
Yes, yeah. And I think every couple is going to look at this differently and what they do with their time and their expectations of themselves and one another. But when the conversations aren't had, it's ambiguous and assumptions are made. And so that's again why I'm so happy to see this becoming mainstream, because people have language for something that has really gotten under a lot of relationships.
Yeah. And did you run into this with your own relationship?
Totally. Yes. And my husband works inside of our business now as well, and he will openly tell the story. So I'm not, airing his dirty laundry. We are very much like, we did not know what we were doing, and no one prepared us for the important, hard, life changing conversations. They prepared us for like baby clothes and nursery colors. And so we floundered a lot, and we talked about divorce, which I never, ever thought that would be part of our story. And that happened in the first year after having a baby. We share our stories because we want other people to save a little stress and enjoy a little bit more if we can teach them and help them do that. But I also would say that I've always been a high functioning anxious person as a woman. I am an eldest daughter. I am an Enneagram 3. All of these things where I have internalized a lot of, damn it, I can do it myself. And I have proven myself right many times, and motherhood was when I proved myself wrong. It was when I couldn't do it all myself. And I didn't want to do it all myself, but I also didn't know how to let anyone else in. So not only was I feeling like I had to do everything, and the mental load thing. My husband was great about like getting up in the night. I refused to use a bottle for a very long time, and so he couldn't do feedings, but he could do diaper changes and he could do soothings, and he has always been an incredibly present and purposeful father. But he did not see what was all going in my brain, and I did not communicate to him. And so in many ways I was like the fairy getting things done that just get done. And that is the appointments, that is the schedules, that is the hours that women spend researching sleep and feeding and all of these things. And so then when you're the one doing all of that, one, if something goes wrong, you're feeling the guilt of it. Two, you're feeling that resentment because you're doing these hard things. So my husband will say he didn't stop to think about it. His life wasn't one way or the other. He was helpful in how I told him to. And one day I literally like laid out, do you want to know? Like I have 4,700 tabs open in my brain, and I'm going to list out every single one for you. And I did in my kitchen. And he was like, wow, that must be really exhausting to have all of those things playing as an open tab in your head. And making it visible to him did not magically make everything feel equitable and like fairy dust, but it gave us a grounds to start being purposeful about it. And that was a huge game changer. It was hard because we were also deconstructing gender roles and deconstructing femininity and masculinity and all of these parts of ourselves while trying to figure out what does it mean to have a caring, equitable home that we are proud. We have one boy and one girl. Like we want them both to pick up on really good habits.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so impressive that you went from that to now owning a business together, owning Postpartum together. That's literally the name of your business, which is so cool. I mean, going back to what you said, there's so many things that hit. When you say you're like a high functioning woman who can do it all herself, you're preaching to the choir. Like, that's me. That's most people in our audience. I think women who are entrepreneurs, who are driven, who have something they're bringing into the world, that's often like one of the main traits that actually allows them to do that. So I imagine that in this new world, in this state, trying to connect with your partner, trying to let them in, you have to let go of a lot.
Yes. And are you saying specifically as a business owner?
I think that side too, but just you have to learn to let go. You have to learn
Yes.
to allow your partner to do things, even if they don't do them the way that you would want them to be done.
110%. That switch, I think, is what saved our marriage. To be honest, I think it started with me taking a deep breath, and honestly, like simultaneously is when I started yoga and meditation and making some distance between me and controlling every situation and everyone in my family, It just was a game changer. And one thing that I found, and maybe other high functioning business owners who often live online in many ways may relate to, I found that early on, I thought we had to have every baby experience. The zoo, the pumpkin patch, all the things. Maybe not the pumpkin patch in San Diego, but all these things. Here's babies, everything at the beach, and every month. And I didn't realize, but I was like robbing my husband of part of the parenthood he wanted, which was a slow, intentional life together. And I was like, oh no, but we've got to get all these check boxes. We've got to make sure baby has this experience, and we have this Instagram picture. And that was me trying to micromanage my entire family's life. And I could not do that and have good, safe, secure relationships with them.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, what a great awareness that you had at that time to come in and connect with your partner on that, to look at what is our vision for this period of life, because it changes so fast, it's fleeting, and it's not something that people always talk about.
Yeah. I felt stressed that I didn't take my kids anywhere fancy for spring break. And at the end of spring break, my son was like, Mom, I feel like a different person. I got to have so much time at home just doing the things that make me me. And he was so happy for that time. And I'm like, why am I stressing because they don't have pictures in the Bahamas this year? My kid just had like one of the best weeks of his life.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's hard to, I think, realize those things that are scripts or stories that are operating underneath our day-to-day lives, and also too, to let go of control, to be okay with not doing them.
Yeah, for sure. Kids aren't going to become exactly who you want them to be either. And you talked about that, didn't you, about your husband and the Little League? I thought that was such an important early revelation, especially as moms. I think we feel like our kids have to show up in a certain way due to us raising them, and letting go and being super curious about what comes out in your kids and how you can nurture that. I loved hearing that. So kudos.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was from the first trimester reflections episode where I announced my pregnancy, and David and I just had this moment where, yeah, he would always talk about, I'm so excited for Little League. I'm so excited for these baseball or softball games. And then we felt like we really connected with our baby spirits, if you will, which actually ended up being the night that we conceived. And one of them was like, I don't want to do Little League. And so we kind of had that agreement of like, yeah, they don't have to, we're happy to support whatever they want to do. And I think that's one belief that David and I have come together on, is that these babies, these kids, these later adults are going to be who they want to be. We're here to nurture them and grow, however they want to move throughout this world, whatever they are drawn to.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of pressure off. So hold tight to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back, you shared 4 different things. Let's get into number 3 now.
Okay, number 3 was intimacy and expectations. Because right now, your partner might be like, oh yeah, babe, like I'm totally cool as long as you feel good. Or maybe they have this expectation from your OB that at 6 weeks you're gonna be right back in the mood. Like, we get these stories and these assumptions, and this is a tender topic, obviously, for a lot of couples, but one that is really important to talk about and address, especially for some couples. That is a normal part of their communication, and that's awesome. They're already building that. And for some couples, maybe you haven't had to bridge that or have these conversations in that way. And so we're really looking at, how do you feel very close, and not just the connection of like affirmation, but what is deep intimacy to you? Maybe that just means like you want to be flesh to flesh sometimes and not have an expectation of where that goes, or you've just got to talk about those things. I think this is where a lot of people can feel really disconnected, and it doesn't get brought up because it's such a taboo thing, even inside of a lot of relationships. And so we do offer conversation starters specifically for intimacy, so that people are bridging that gap that a lot of people have, especially if it has just worked for a while. Then it's just going to be different, and it is different for everybody. I see, I'm sure that you do too, the posts that are like, I can't wait till my 6-week appointment to have sex. And other people, I would say from my years of working with people, like 6 months is probably an average if I had to pick a median of where most people are feeling confident getting back into more regular intimacy. I think one, a lot of men are blind to what happens. And so part of this is having conversations with men about how women's bodies change through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum so that they are educated supporters.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you provide prompts for people because intimacy is a subject that people just don't have a lot of language for. Like, we're not really taught to talk about it in a way. We're taught protection and we're taught this makes babies, but the intimacy piece is so powerful. I've actually found that in this pregnancy, I had one or two times where I just felt like I was in an emotional tsunami, and having my husband just hold me, like, not even patting my back, like, he's just there, he's not even talking. That level of intimacy was incredible, and it was so special to feel held and supported in that way. And so I think what you were saying too is sometimes just that, like, skin to skin contact, just that, like, loving, gentle embrace can be so connective in a time where you might feel disconnected.
Yeah. And you're going to be vulnerable to each other in ways that you've never been vulnerable before because having a baby is going to naturally call that out for you. And I think that is why couples really have a great opportunity before a baby to understand how to make it safe to be vulnerable, make it safe to show up in that level of intimacy with one another, that you can cry or say the things that you don't like or be so ecstatic that your body's shaking, like whatever that is, it's going to call new levels of vulnerability, which I would say are highly tied to intimacy.
Yeah. And the piece that you shared about the physical recovery, the hormonal journey that women go through after birth, it's such a massive physical thing they're going through that then affects intimacy, their ability to connect, vulnerability, like you're saying too.
There's not even, in my opinion, enough information out there for women about their bodies, let alone information or leaders helping men to understand women's bodies.
Yeah, agreed. I think women get inundated with reels and information during pregnancy, but postpartum does really feel like this kind of black box because of the hormonal journey that people go through, the recovery. Physically, recovery can look so different depending on what your birth experience was. It's crazy. And then for men, what do you wish that men knew about that? Or what do you wish that they would do to be more informed about that period?
Well, specifically about physical recovery, probably just like find a way to get educated. The information is out there, so take initiative. Don't expect your partner to teach you everything. And that kind of ties to the mental load in general. But even that might be going to the pelvic floor doctor with her. Prenatal pelvic floor therapy is an incredible thing in postpartum as well. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's going to the chiropractor, like any place that they can accompany you and understand and ask questions about what is going on in your changing body.
I love that. Yeah. So, communication wise, I mean, communication is everything with relationships. When I think of a relationship, it's the space between two people, and communication facilitates that. So, when it comes to this, what do you recommend?
I recommend becoming your own best detective, and I will elaborate on this. I find that a lot of people are operating out of stories they're telling themselves that may be partially true, but they're often in assumptions. Maybe we misread something that our partner said. Maybe their tone came off a way that if we were to use that tone, we would mean a certain emotion. And so that's what we assume is coming at us. I see a lot of patterns that get stopped by making really clear the assumptions, the things that are going unsaid in the conversation. So you get dumb and plain in communication. And I say, like, really unsexy communication makes room for really sexy connection in a relationship. And so you need to know, maybe instead of, you never notice what needs done around here, it could be the story I'm telling myself is that I'm responsible for all of these things because I don't see you taking initiative. I'm owning first and foremost that is a story. Now, my partner can validate that story. They can make some changes, which is usually what happens so that we both see the story from the same place. Or they might agree and be like, you're right, I don't see this stuff. And now I'm going to either make a choice to do better and be cognizant or to not. I love using that line, like the story I'm telling myself. Or when you said that, it felt like you were accusing me, and I'm feeling myself getting really defensive right now. I want to make sure if I'm getting into defense mode, it's because you really were the asshole that I just felt, or, you really were coming off in a certain way. My reaction might be justified, but let me put this little filter in first before I react so that we have a mutual understanding. Now, I think that some arguments are justified and good. I think some couples need that interactive energy and not in a harmful way, but we don't want to be having arguments based on misunderstandings or assumptions we've had, or maybe I've had a bad day, so I assume that every man is just out to serve the patriarchy. So no matter what my husband has said or done the last 13 years, he's a man and I'm just going to put all that on him. We have to be aware of what we're doing and coming in with so that we can have fair and productive conversations and even productive arguments. But people often just get stuck in these loops they don't know how to get out of. So one of my biggest joys is being that detective that literally hears from both of them. This is how I see this argument. This is how I see this argument. And then I get to guide them through conversations to figure out what's going on and what the loop is and where they can choose to stop it.
Yeah. Oh, the line of the story I'm telling myself is so important because it's so true, right? We want us to kind of stay out of that accusatory language that could just put someone's defenses up and then lead to this ping pong back and forth without any sort of connection. So,
one more thing I want to add to that is communication is going to go awry sometimes. I mean, it still does for us, and we study this stuff every day. The next best skill is knowing how to repair and how to be mindful of owning your mistakes, owning your energy, owning that your partner is not the ideal person you've created in your brain to serve you in your life. Give them space to be human and repair. That's the constant choice to come back together and keep doing it together.
and what does repair look like?
Yeah, well, I think this has to be defined within the couple too. So this is a literal question that I ask some of my clients is what does that look like? For some, it's like a high five that's like, babe, we're on the same team. Our only swag is magnets and it just says, babe, we're on the same team. Like that's where we want everybody getting to. So that might be repair. Like, hey, we came at this not in our good energy. It's not really worth rehashing. Like, we're on the same team. For some people, that's a hug or something that feels physically intimate. For some people, it is having a next step, especially if it's a conversation that's not just emotionally driven, but it's like, this has to get done. Having the next best step. Maybe we don't plan out the next 5 years of what vehicles we need to have, but what do we need to agree that we're going to make the next step a priority? I find for especially people that are maybe women that are worried about follow through, or if their partner's really going to step up when they finally share these big emotions they've been keeping in, but we can't come asking for a 5-year plan. It's like, what is the next step? And are we committed to doing that? And maybe it's putting it on the calendar to say we are making this a priority.
I love that. And I think too, so many things are coming to mind, but obviously, right when baby arrives, you're exhausted. So you're not always going to nail communication. You might say some things you regret. So it's nice to be like, hey, we're on the same team. Let's maybe talk about this tomorrow or do some repair at a different time.
Yeah, I think it's really important to learn that it's not usually you versus your partner. I think we choose to do life with someone else so that it can be us versus all the things that life throws our way.
Yeah, sometimes when David and I are entering a tough situation, whether we get to the airport and it looks like an absolute chaotic mess, or we know we're entering into like maybe a tense social situation with other people where there might be like conflict with others, we always look at each other and we fist bump and we're like, okay, same team, same team. And I think that's something that we're practicing before kids, but it's going to be so important when we have 2 hours of sleep and we have other sorts of chaos
Yes.
happening.
And that gets to make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that we're trying to figure out too and like put into our vision for postpartum is how can we really enjoy this period? Like how can we bring fun into this new chapter?
That's great.
Yeah. So we covered four major things that are in relationships postpartum. Is there anything else that you want to share? Any last thoughts?
Well, I won't go into it, but the fifth one we talked about was just identity. And I am so thrilled this year to have seen the movement of putting the word matrescence in the dictionary. Did you see that whole?
Yes.
Yeah. There is a TED Talk from Dr. Alexandra Sachs on matrescence. And that talk literally changed my life. It is the catapult for this business to give women the words and the confidence to go through this transition and not feel bad about the changes that are happening in their life. But truly, like if you are in this season in any way, may you give yourself a lot of grace and may you let it be okay for you to kind of open handedly be exploring the world in a different way. And you might cling to new identities that aren't you forever. You might let go of some identities. There are so many moving pieces of you that are going to be activated by taking care of a new baby. And Sam, I know that you're having a little girl, and I think there's just even some really unique pieces of your younger self that you get to look at and love on. I hate the word self-care because I think it can be so minimalized, but like lots of self exploration and knowing what your own voice and feelings sounds like. I think this is an open door invitation, this kind of transformation that we go through. And some people really see that as an open door of opportunity, and some people see that as a closed door on a lot of other things. And I think we get to be all of these versions of ourselves and get to be them within motherhood. So I hope that people can feel the embrace of that, especially as passion driven business owners who are the kind of people paving their own way, anyways.
Yeah, I think matrescence is a beautiful word. We will definitely find that TED Talk and put it in the show notes. I think one of the main things I took from that book was that as women, you go through a few major hormonal shifts. You go through puberty, you may or may not go through matrescence, becoming a mother, and then menopause. And so two out of the three are guaranteed. And most people, when we're at the stage, we've gone through puberty. So puberty is a weird time. Like you're an awkward teenager and you're figuring yourself out. And this is kind of like a second, totally different version of that.
Yes. I have found so much of my joy in the like emo playlist that I loved when I was a teenager. Full circle, embrace the baddie. That is my self-care, is a drive in my car cranking some like Good Charlotte or Blink 182. Like it just, you go hard. So find that awkward puberty girl and like love her really hard this time.
I love that. Oh my God. I'm gonna bump like Rise Against and Blink 182.
Yes. Oh, it's good. It's good.
Oh, this is amazing. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for being here, for sharing all your wisdom. It's just been such an incredible conversation. And I ask all my guests this at the end. Of course, the show is called Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. Do you have a confession you want to share with our audience?
Oh, okay. I will. And it is similar to motherhood. In starting a business, I really wanted things to look better on the outside than they were on the inside. And then once I did that, I started to feel the pressure of maintaining this idea that things were going well. And I didn't get the help that I needed because I was trying to save face. And so I have been in a season, actually in the last few months of the business, of just being a little more clear about what isn't going well or what is hard or behind the scenes. And I've never felt more supported than I do when I feel more vulnerable. I want to say one thing with that. I think a lot of times we think like, oh, I've just got to like spew all my vulnerability online. And that's not it either. It was easier to look on the outside like my business was really slamming when it wasn't, when I was scared and crying and didn't know if it would make it. And I put myself in that place of feeling like I had to keep, like, oh, I can't go back now. I wish I would have just learned from other people more and saved myself some of the battle scars.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. And I hear that all the time too. It's like people feel like they need to do everything on their own and they need to have all the answers and everything needs to be perfect. And oftentimes, none of those things are true.
Yep. And I think we just, like, especially as women, we need money in the hands of more women, and we owe it to each other to just be like, men can shoot the shit at the bar about business, and I think we should be able to too.
Yeah, absolutely. Ugh, well, cheers to that. Love that share. Oh, Chelsea, where can people find more about you and Mike and your work together?
Yep, so we are postpartum together. So honestly, Instagram and Threads are the only social platforms I have the capacity to show up for right now. So postpartum together. If you like it a little more unhinged, that's Threads. And then postpartumtogether.com. So you can see our current offerings and how we work with expecting couples or new parents in the first few years on building up that relationship foundation and trying our best to make the hard conversations like fun and engaging.
I love that. Chelsea, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Listeners, definitely connect with Chelsea. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes.
Thank you. It was so fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode and you're new here, be sure to follow the show so you do not miss future conversations like this. And also be sure to sign up for our email newsletter in the show notes. We often email our audience asking for their questions for upcoming guests and interviews. So we want to make sure that we hear from you. You can also follow me, Samantha Fackler, on Instagram at samantha.fackler, where we often poll our audience as well. We love to hear from you and what you want to hear on the show. So please do not be shy, reach out, share your questions, your comments, your thoughts. And with that, thank you so much for being here. I will catch you next time.